coming in, because there are 32 different NATO leaders and foreign ministers and defence ministers here. They're all giving press briefings. It's this time of day we get a lot of information to sift through. But let's discuss what we know so far. Joining me is Jason Israel, Senior Fellow for the Defence Technology Initiative at the Centre for European Policy Analysis. Let's start, Jason, with Ukraine. That was, for President Zelensky, it seems, a reasonably positive meeting with President Trump, not ruling out those Patriot interceptors and saying Patriot technology could perhaps be built in Ukraine too.
Yes, that's right, James. That is significant that there wasn't a no, and there are other countries where Patriot interceptors are manufactured, like Japan and Germany. So adding Ukraine to that would certainly be both in the spirit of what this NATO meeting has really been about, which is co-production opportunities and joint procurement opportunities. So that is in the spirit of the summit. One thing to note, though, is that if this decision is made today, there is a long production line and lead time before those Patriot interceptors would start to be actually coming off the line. So we just have to remember that in the near term, being able to defend Ukraine against ballistic missile attacks will continue to be, in the near term, a problem. So all the other discussions that happened at the NATO summit about Europe also developing its own ballistic missile defenses, and those stand. And then the second point is that this is one element of the actual battlefield dynamics, not part of the ultimate goal of a lasting peace and how that would be negotiated, which is, of course, an ongoing discussion.
Do you think President Trump has taken the European line that things have changed? Because there is a European narrative that you need to support President Zelensky even more now, because he is having, his forces are having real effect in pushing back at Russia, firing on Moscow, drones attacking Moscow, attacking the industry and oil infrastructure, and making life on the peninsula of Crimea almost unlivable now.
Yes, well, if you look historically at these last 4 years, we are certainly in a period right now where there is heightened both attacks from Russia into Ukraine and Ukraine into Russia, which, if we just look back a few years, any individual strike was big news when it came to a long-range strike. So yes, this is certainly a heightened level. We also know that immediately after a meeting with President Zelensky, President Trump has tended to show, we had a great meeting, I really wish the people of Ukraine well, and I'm going to do what I can to defend them. So is there that sort of recency effect that he has as well? And I would expect that, based on how that pre-meeting went, that we might have something similar afterwards. But once again, it gets back to the question of what does that mean for the next step? And a key point is that President Trump often conflates a ceasefire with a long-term peace and negotiating a peace when he discusses it. So when we're watching what comes out of this, we should look at, does this particular announcement move toward a ceasefire in the near term, or does it actually get at the heart of what the national interests of Russia and Ukraine are, and what the long-term land agreement will be when it comes to Ukraine and Russia? And of course, it just seems like we're still a long way off from that.
Jason, just decode a bit of language that was mentioned there repeatedly during the news conference, or at least the comments from President Zelensky and President Trump. Security guarantees. That sounds like just a phrase, but that's very important for Ukrainians, isn't it? Because there were security guarantees. They go back to 1994, something called the Budapest Memorandum.
Yes, one shadow that has been cast over the last several years is that Budapest Memorandum. And so, of course, the interest is for President Zelensky to continue to bring it up. President Trump has not shown much sympathy for the Budapest Memorandum and continues to bring it back to the present day. So the question of what security guarantees would actually be, it always comes up. I like to put security guarantees in something that would ultimately be in the final verbiage of a negotiated peace agreement. And of course, what that security guarantee would mean would have to be very specific in that document. Of course, it's not as simple and elegant as Article 5 of NATO. It would have to be something negotiated between. And we've seen some of that language previously go back and forth, but so far not in full agreement between the countries.
Jason Israel, Senior Fellow for the Defence Technology Initiative at the Centre for European Policy Analysis. Thank you for joining us here on Al Jazeera to look at some of the developments, and there are a lot of developments that have taken place at this summit, and we're still waiting for the final press conference from President Trump. A lot of discussion